Welcome back to State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, Donald Trump addressed an audience at the World Economic Forum's Davos conference earlier this afternoon. Watch this clip.
Ago, I took the oath of office and we began the golden age of America. On day one, I signed an executive order to stop all government censorship. No longer will our government label the speech of our own citizens as misinformation or disinformation. My message to every business in the world is very simple. Come make your product in America, and we will give you among the lowest taxes of any nation on earth. My administration has taken action to abolish all discriminatory diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense. Our nation has suffered greatly, but we're going to bring it back and make it greater, bigger, stronger, better than ever before.
So, does Donald Trump's re-election symbolise the death knell of the Davos man? Of course, who could forget the time that our own Prime Minister said this?
Let's just ask you quickly, you have to choose now between Davos or Westminster?
Davos.
Why?
Because Westminster is too constrained.
With me now is my panel, former Reform UK candidate Simon Danczuk and former Labour advisor Matthew Torbett. Now, Simon, the Davos consensus, economic liberalism, social liberalism, cultural liberalism, I mean, it's over, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is over. And whatever you might think of Donald Trump, I think we should celebrate what he stands for and what he's talking about. This is somebody who's talking positively about his country and what he's going to do, lower taxes, getting rid of the diversity agenda, stopping illegal immigration, all the rest of it. A really positive message for his country, and you can't take that away from him. And it's having a great impact across the world, and it really brings Starmer into contrast, doesn't it? There's Starmer calling himself Davos man, effectively. He's not talking Britain up like Trump is talking up America.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew, there is a point here, isn't there, in that Keir Starmer embracing Davos, but many people in that room, the bankers, the financiers, they were the people who, let's be blunt, smashed the working class across the West over the last 30 years. They went all in on big business. They went all in on big corporates. They went all in on globalism. And at the same time, they lost sight of hard-working, ordinary people as jobs went out to China. Nobody really gave the losers of globalisation, as they were called, compensation for any of that. And now Donald Trump's in, and he's saying to that room, well, you get what you deserve. You get people like me.
Yeah, I mean, if we're calling Keir Davos man and sitting with millionaires, I think we can't pretend Donald Trump didn't have a whole host of billionaires on stage at his inauguration. I don't think he's a friend of the working class necessarily. However, I think this sort of talk will continue to turn people's attention because, we're still suffering in many parts in the north from the 2008 financial crash. I think we should have done what Finland had done and jailed many of these people, and actually what we did is...
I agree with you on that.
We socialised the debt and privatised the bailout for everybody else. And it will ask, people in the northwest, the northeast will go, what has globalisation done for me? Yeah. My area is in decline. We've had deindustrialisation since the 1980s. And I think we've seen that with the way that people are wanting to vote with their feet. We saw it in America. People, if they've got very little to lose, they're willing to gamble it because surely it can't get any worse. And I think that plays into Reform and others who are seeming like a different option to people.
I mean, Simon, there is this point, isn't there, that go back to the 90s, the early 2000s, all the economists, all the expert class were saying globalisation is going to be great for workers. Tony Blair, remember in 2005, that big speech he gave, he said, well, if you don't believe in globalisation, you're the closed-minded ones. He basically laughed at everybody who said, hang on a minute, I'm not sure that endless deregulation and endless free trade and helping China up in this way is going to be good for ordinary workers. And actually, the economists, the expert class, Blair and others, they were wrong. I mean, they were wrong. And if you look at everything that's happened in Western states, really since the 2010s, with this big anti-establishment backlash, whether it's Reform, whether it's Trump, whether it's Le Pen in France, Meloni in Italy. I mean, this is basically, the chicken's coming home to roost.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's not going to change direction anytime soon.
No,
people have had enough of this globalist agenda, and these two centre parties, the Conservatives and Labour, that we've had in Britain for some time now, people have had enough of that. And it's ironic, isn't it? Because those two parties would say that Reform are far right, which is nonsense, and yet it's Reform that are saying we should nationalise British steel, we should nationalise nationalise the energy companies. Anybody earning £20,000 or less shouldn't be paying any tax at all. I think they're good working class issues and policies that have real appeal to people.
I mean, I did say after the 2019 election that the new formula in politics, Matthew, is leaning right on culture and making some of these left-wing noises on the economy. Obviously, Boris Johnson fumbled that realignment. You know, he gave people the opposite of what he promised. Reform seemed to be picking up that realignment. Donald Trump has not only picked it up, but he's expanded it. He's reaching into Hispanic, Latino, working-class voters. He's doing quite well among the young as well. I mean, it looks like, yes, Labour in power with a big landslide, but as we know, it's a loveless landslide. It looks as though Labour are on the wrong side of this new winning formula in politics.
I think partly because Keir has surrounded himself with people from the Blair era, and they're very out of touch with what modern 21st century politics is supposed to look like. And I think that's why a lot of the communications around Number 10 is reactive as opposed to proactive, because I don't have a particular faction in the Labour Party, but I constantly find myself screaming for radical ideas. And by radical, that doesn't necessarily mean left-wing. I thought the national minimum wage under Tony Blair was totally radical for its time. And the idea of Sure Start and other things. And Tony Blair was no socialist. So there's no new ideas. It's almost a regurgitation of the past and, in a way, managed decline. And I think because we're living in the era where, people hate politicians, unfortunately, Labour and the Conservative sound like politicians.
And that is also true, briefly, Simon, about the new diversity agenda, isn't it? Diversity is basically conformity. You know, in the eyes of the Davos crowd, you either believe in the globalist elite or you are a far-right, ignorant moron.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see all the corporates now trying to backtrack on diversity, trying to catch up with that. And it's only going in that direction. Thank goodness.
Well, the new zeitgeist is here, I think. Counterculture is the new culture